Stephen Laudem is an opera composer. Currently, he has successfully launched another opera, and the audience loved it, but the creator, Stephen, is not exactly excited or enthusiastic. However, he is overwhelmed, especially with many people approaching him, but he just moves past, looking down. As Stephen experiences a panic attack during an opera performance, he seeks refuge among the plants upstairs because, well, he blends in well enough. Glancing at his watch helps him calm down. Patricia, his therapist's wife, searches for him to introduce him to an opera commissioner. However, Stephen, anxious, reluctantly joins. The conversation then shifts to his next opera, triggering Stephen. But Patricia reminds Stephen of the commission he will be getting. Though Stephen knows that his social anxiety gets the better of him, they discuss his depression and breakdown after his last successful opera, 5 years ago. The scene transitions to Julian and Teresa, two young people sharing a kiss, and capturing the moment with a Polaroid shot. They are both seemingly in love. Julian is Patricia's son and Stephen's stepson. Teresa is Magdalena's daughter. Meanwhile, Teresa's stepfather, Trey Ruffa, a history actor and lawyer, hosts a barbecue followed by dinner. Teresa's parents, Trey and Magdalena, are protective of her, which Trey mentions as he talks about a case he has been handling for a while regarding an abducted teenager. It's a cautionary tale to make Teresa be mindful around her and recognize the dangers teenagers face in the world. The girls tease Trey for joining such activities, but Trey is very passionate about it and even invites the girls. During dinner, Trey is a bit obsessive-compulsive about a few things like the direction of passing clothes, also telling Teresa to put on her jacket. Although not related, Teresa and Trey have a good fatherly relationship. In another part of the story, Stephen grapples with a creative block while playing. He feels like it is not for him and he hates it, and his assistant, Anton, cheers him up despite Stephen being cranky. But then Anton delivers unfortunate news of another job offer from a competitor, Gandalf. Feeling shaky, Stephen questions Anton about any beef between them. In the morning, Steve asks his wife Patricia if they can have a hanky-panky outside their scheduled one. Patricia, here we can see, has some certain obsessions and compulsions about keeping things in order, like schedules and cleanliness. In the morning, Stephen gets inspiration for his next orchestra, and Patricia is very helpful. Patricia, who treats Stephen more like a patient than a husband, is stressed as Julian, her son, resists the idea of going to Harvard. Patricia is panicking about Julian's choices, but Julian just tells Mom to chill. Stephen comments that Julian has become very decisive, and Patricia comments that he got it from his dad. After managing family matters and attending to Stephen's medication, like giving fish oil capsules, Patricia heads to work. Teresa goes to school, and Trey is dropping her off. Trey asks Teresa about her school plans and convinces her to consider attending another school. Trey still thinks Teresa is still a baby and tells her that she should be suspicious around people. Meanwhile, Patricia engages with the patient, leaving Stephen in a state of despair after Anton's resignation. Stephen is self-pitying, thinking his life is over because Anton has left him. The patient is coming now, and Patricia needs to get rid of Stephen. Patricia suggests he takes a walk with the dog, seemingly avoiding dealing with him. Stephen follows the dog, exploring every corner for inspiration for his opera. He hears every conversation, sees every emotion down the street, and sees every individual as an inspiration. Stephen hates it, but Patricia says she knows what she's doing. In another setting, Teresa and Julian present their case for cooling and heating for the ants. They deliver it well. Teresa separates from her friends. Teresa whispers to Julian that she's going to love him forever. Later on, Stephen walks into a bar, leaving the dog, Levy, outside, promising it will only be for 5 minutes. He orders whiskey but can't decide on his choices for a drink. The bartender serves him, although Stephen is unsure of his order and seems his mind is messy. Stephen becomes chatty about the weather with the bartender. He plays and eats with the nuts. A woman named Katrina strikes up a conversation with him, to which he responds by saying that the nuts can give cancer. She goes over to the bar where Stephen is sitting. The woman is an operator of a tugboat and lives on the boat. Stephen is a bit amazed, as he did not expect it. Stephen keeps asking about the woman's daily life. The woman, Katrina, is just everywhere and does not stay still in the same place. Stephen is further interested in Katrina. Katrina asks why Stephen is drinking at 11 a.m. in the morning. Stephen answers that he is breaking a pattern. When Stephen is asked, he introduces himself as an opera composer and tells her about his writing block. The woman talks about why she has become a tugboat operator, which is sad, but she avoids it by inviting Stephen onto her boat together with the dog. So, Stephen gets onto the boat with Katrina's help, especially with a life vest. Katrina is very passionate about her boat, wanting to live on it where she has a crew of 3. She shows an axe, and Levy gets scared, but Katrina is just showing her tools. However, one of them is a murderer. Stephen explores around, up to the navigation area. Katrina gladly shows Stephen and tours him around, explaining how everything works. However, Stephen feels somewhat uncomfortable. He He asks Katrina what her problem is, and Katrina says that she is addicted to love. Although funny, Katrina insists it's real because she has been arrested for stalking. She then reveals that she goes to bars to invite guys back onto her boat because she just could not get enough of it. This moment scares Steven, sensing Katrina is dangerous. Steven wants to leave, sensing that he is in trouble. But then, Katrina offers tea and a sandwich and pleads, so Steven accepts. Steven gets the tea, but his anxiety spikes to new heights, especially when Katrina starts to show her goodies covered in lace and silk. Although Steven is scared, Katrina still pursues. Eventually, at first hesitant, Steven gives in to having a physical union with Katrina. Back at the house, Patricia is attending to a patient who is having an attraction to her. Irritated, Patricia convinces him to stop as it is only a normal transference between a therapist and a patient. The patient becomes really creepy, and Patricia still maintains professionalism. Later, at the boat after finishing, Katrina suggests they should do it again. Steven thinks it's not a good idea and says that they should not see each other again as it is not realistic, and clearly, Katrina is not quite in the right headspace, given her mental problems too. Katrina tells him that Steven actually likes Katrina, but Steven just denies it. And that's where her love addiction is springing. Steven rushes out of the boat with the dog and tells Levy that Steven has been seduced. While humming, a ship's horn toots and surprises Steven, but he suddenly falls into the water. At that very moment, Steven unblocks his writer's block, finally getting the right tune and can finally complete his composition. His next opera is inspired by Katrina's life and promiscuity. During the rehearsal, Steven asks the actress many times to change her acting because it does not match Katrina's exact personality. In this play, the character is Sandy, inspired by Katrina. The script is very much exactly the dialogue between Steven and Katrina. The actress is very pissed because Steven is frustrated at how the tone goes. He almost reveals that Sandy is a real person and claims that he just has invented her personality. Steven explains the whole psyche and personality of Sandy. The actress, though, interprets that Sandy, her character, is a murderer. Steven is at the end of his wit and interrupts the rehearsal again, almost teary because of the delivery of tone. The director advises Steven to stop coming to rehearsal so he stops messing up the actress and actor in the rehearsal process. She tells him that the opera is brilliant, but he should allow them to keep it going without Steven micromanaging every second. Back at home, Teresa's mom, Magdalena, works as a housekeeper at Patricia's house. Patricia is giving away stuff and tells Magdalena to take whatever she likes. They talk about each other's families. Patricia reveals she got pregnant with Julian while she was in med school, but she still continues her studies after giving birth. She reveals that her grandmother took her in with the baby Julian and Julian's dad. Patricia is a bit nostalgic about it, but it clearly shows she has had problems with family as she hesitates to mention. Magdalena is raised Catholic, as Patricia has admired Magdalena's pendant, which was given by Magdalena's aunt. This now reveals Patricia's own issue with religion, where she is a bit obsessed with cleaning and decluttering. In a way, being a therapist, she thinks what she is doing is cleaning patients' minds. A patient has canceled, so she excitedly invites Magdalena, saying they should clean together. Magdalena gives off a weird look. So, this scene right here shows how beautifully the two mothers clean, as if it's not a chore but a beautiful ritual or a hobby. Teresa and Julian arrive. Although Patricia knows Julian has a girlfriend, Magdalena doesn't. So, when the introductions happen, Magdalena is not very delighted that Teresa has a boyfriend, and is very surprised at that. Teresa also does not expect her mother to be there. Patricia, though, is very delighted with Teresa. Teresa introduces Magdalena as her mom. Also, Magdalena is angry that Teresa tells Patricia a lot of things about her but not to her mother, like her favorite snack. Magdalena pleads with Teresa to concentrate on her studies and not delve into love as it may destroy her future. It is revealed here that Magdalena got pregnant early in life and had to stop her studies, and she sees herself in Teresa. Patricia goes into a church impeccably dressed later to meditate while Steven is at home. We can see in this scene how Patricia is slowly contemplating a religious life. Trey and his family dine with Julian. Trey, though like Magdalena, does not want Teresa to have a boyfriend. Trey admits to not going to college but reveals he makes more money and shares that he is a stenographer. He expresses that working in court, he has seen a lot that he cannot forget. Trey demonstrates how he works so Julian reads the paper while Trey is doing his job as a stenographer with the timer. Teresa asks her father about how he does that without any mistakes, and Trey is very proud that he never has mistaken. Julian formally meets the parents, and all goes well. However, while cleaning Julian's room, Magdalena finds a bunch of Polaroid photos of Teresa in compromising positions, and mostly intimate. She comes home while Trey is cleaning his props. Trey senses something wrong with his wife, so he comforts her. Magdalena gives them to Trey. Trey, asking about their age differences, thinks about pressing charges against Julian. Magdalena, though, does not want this to go to legal process, but Trey is very persistent and does not see this as normal teenage stuff. Magdalena reminds Trey that he is not Teresa's father, but Trey still acts as the father figure to Teresa. The opera premieres, and Steven's family is there. Steven isn't a passionate character, making sure his composition is delivered with justice. The character Sandy performs well with the other actor, and the audience, especially Patricia, is emotionally touched by the play. Katrina is among the audience, touched by it as the acting and conversation are almost similar closely to Steven's interaction with Katrina, and is emotionally touched and amused by it, especially the complete details. However, of course, in this scene, the character of the play murders the man with an axe, just like the one in the tugboat. The play concludes, and Katrina is left shocked. The actress that plays Sandy draws Steven out of his hiding and onto the stage to receive applause, and now Katrina sees him. Steven's opera is successful, so people pay compliments and talk to him. However, this exact scenario spikes his anxiety. Everyone asks about the creative process behind it as they are very amazed by the play's character. Steven, though, forgets his lie that the character is just made up and admits that the character came to him for a talk. The patrons are more amazed than ever. Anton and his new boss Gandol arrive, where Anton has made up that Steven has thrown him out, which reveals he is not offered the job but he has sought it. Steven defends himself from Anton's lies, stating that it is not the case. Gandol appreciates and pays compliments to Steven. Katrina arrives later and takes it wrong that she is Steven's muse and misunderstands that they have a special connection, and now she will stay in Brooklyn. Katrina gets this wrong interpretation that Steven wants her and created this whole bubble that Katrina should change, like become less intimidating, and should be slower in her actions so she can be together with Steve. This causes Steven to have an anxiety panic attack again, so he retreats into the bathroom. Patricia and her son, Julian, talk as Patricia has some religious impulses again. Julian thinks it's dirt on her forehead, but it is Ash Wednesday. She tells Julian about her Catholic girlhood and admits that she has been fond of lying, but Julian does not get it. Patricia asks Julian about Teresa's mom being the new cleaning lady. Julian, though, is uncomfortable about it. Patricia also explains the psychological mumbo-jumbo that although Julian is in love, they don't know what they want. Julian brings up Patricia's failed marriage, but Patricia has a different memory of it and wants Patricia to just leave him and his thoughts alone. While in the bathroom, trying to avoid Katrina, Steven is out of his wits. Steven sneaks out through the bathroom window and runs back home. He hides under the sheets, panicking. The family comes home, and Julian praises Steven. Steven calms down because of Julian's praising. Patricia tends to Steven, especially as Steven is having an anxiety attack again. But she is horrified and discovers his sin of putting the shoes on the bed that Steven momentarily has forgotten. This is bad because Patricia is a neat freak, rooted in religious obsession mostly. Also, shoes on the bed are yuck. Patricia gives a long, momentary stare off at her reflection in the mirror. She comes out, and Steven talks to her. Patricia talks to Steven about giving away the house to a church when Julian goes to college. Patricia ponders living in a tiny apartment instead. Later, Patricia goes to a convent and donates a lot of things to the children. She arrives and helps out, giving snacks to the children and volunteering for cleaning. She goes up and checks on the quarters of a nun and feels ecstatic seeing the emptiness and superb simplicity of the room that has somehow relaxed her. She just stares at the corner and sleeps tearfully. Teresa comes home with Turi lining up the Polaroids and confronts her. Teresa, though, is cool about it and says that they did have a physical relationship and they have used protection. Unknowingly, Turi has recorded the conversation and will use it against Julian as an admission. Trey maintains that because Teresa is still 16 and Julian is already 18, and is considered as an adult, in which there can be a case of Magdalena learns of this and goes to Teresa. Teresa cries that they are going to ruin Julian's life just because of their minimal age difference. So, Julian will be registered as an offender and people will think that Julian is the worst. Julian, Steven, and Patricia gather around with a lawyer and have to fight the charges. Julian, though, believes that Teresa will not give a victim statement against Julian. Also, he becomes angry that Patricia thinks badly of Teresa. Steven suggests what if Julian and Teresa get married. However, Teresa is considered too young to marry in the state of New York. But the lawyer advises that it can help the trial to dissolve. During a web call, Teresa and Julian do their research to find other states that have different marriage ages which accept 16 years old and discover Delaware. However, it needs parental consent. They both realize they might not make it even if they get married. They both assure each other that they are in it together. However, Teresa is worried that marrying young might make them break up later in life. Julian, though, tells Teresa that if ever that happens that they end up marrying someone else, Julian will still think about Teresa. Steven goes on his morning walks and is stalked by Katrina. Steven tells Katrina that what they had is not personal, but Katrina insists that she and Steven have some magical relationship, and because of her, Steven breaks out of his writer's block. Steven maintains that though she is the inspiration, The whole thing still comes from Steven's brain. Katrina excitedly says that they are meant together. Steven tells Katrina she needs help, and Katrina just easily goes away to seek treatment like it's no big deal. In a plot twist, Katrina employs Patricia as her therapist. Their session starts. She tells Patricia that she has gone to jail because of her obsessive behavior, and now she must have relapsed again as she is in love. Patricia doesn't believe being in love is a disease. Katrina tells Patricia her history of love addiction and crimes, along with it, like stalking and being in rehab. She needs help because she is in love with a man. Patricia asks about Katrina's childhood, and she says she grew up in a confined space and was brainwashed with romantic movies. When there was a movie shooting in their town, she snuck into the actor's trailer and took off her clothes. The actor came in but called the cops on her, which got her arrested and into court-ordered rehab and therapy. She is recommended not to watch romantic movies. Then she reveals her job as a tugboat captain. This triggers Patricia's own anxiety upon learning about it now, discovering that Sandy's character is inspired by a real woman and that the man Katrina is describing could possibly be her husband. In response, she collects all the appliances in her house and other books, packing up. Later, Katrina is seen running away crying. Steven arrives and happily announces that he gets the commission and the story they request is about aliens, and he plans to rehire Anton again. Patricia reveals she is going to give away her things and will get into the nunnery instead as a vocation. Steven, though, thinks she is joking until Patricia tells him about meeting Katrina. This devastates Steven again as he goes in silence. Patricia relays that Katrina is genuinely in love with Steven. Steven sarcastically claims to give up on life and just stay in a room to play music. Carl, one of Patricia's patients whom she resents, arrives. Carl further irritates Patricia by saying he is mad that Patricia is late, and that it mirrors a bad past. Patricia shares a story with him while packing her things, during which she strips her clothes one by one and screams like a crazy person, experiencing a breakdown this time. Concerned, Steven calls a nun to assist Patricia. The nun visits to look after Patricia. Steven has called Patricia's psychiatrist and that the doctor has advised rest. Steven assures Julian that it will be okay. Steven informs Julian about his separation from Patricia, and Julian expresses gratitude for Steven's role as a stepfather even though Steven thinks he has not done enough for Julian. The nun is orienting Patricia on what will happen now. Julian visits Patricia, who remains determined to join the nunnery. Magdalena joins the conversation, discussing Julian and Teresa's situation. Magdalena supports Julian and Teresa's marriage in Delaware, and it will happen as Magdalena will consent. But the challenge lies in Trey potentially intercepting them. Because if they drive to Delaware with Trey's connections with the police, it won't happen. Steven rushes to the Brooklyn dock, seeking Katrina and her boat for assistance. But Katrina is not really liking the request as she is guarding herself from further hurt. But Steven pleads because he wants to save his stepson. Subsequently, Trey imposes strict measures on Teresa, leading them to engage in historical reenactments as actors and will keep them there for 2 days. Magdalena is still an accomplice for the escape. Teresa and Magdalena find themselves alone. While Trey is preoccupied heavily, Magdalena seizes the moment to help Teresa escape smoothly without making Trey suspicious. Teresa catches on, and Magdalena says that she will choose Teresa over Trey. Unaware of the family's involvement, Teresa is surprised when Steven takes them on a banana boat to meet Katrina. Teresa and Magdalena board the tugboat, leaving New York Harbor. Trey catches wind of their escape and calls everyone he knows to look for his wife and stepdaughter. However, he has no idea that they are escaping by boat. A crewmate of Katrina's voices concern, expressing a desire not to witness Katrina getting hurt. The kids, crew, Steven, and Magdalena are hanging out on the boat and having a good time. They prepare for their requirements for the marriage. Additionally, Katrina is ordained to officiate the wedding. While Steven plays music for the crew, Katrina skillfully navigates the boat, setting the scene for the upcoming wedding in Delaware. Despite Teresa's reservations about facing the realities of growing up and moving forward, Julian assures Teresa it will be fine. They finally arrive in Delaware. Steven observes Katrina operate and is amazed by it. Steven and Katrina engage in a conversation where he expresses thanks. Steven apologizes for using Katrina and messing up with her. In return, Katrina apologizes for seducing him even though she knows she is married and being the cause of Patricia's breakdown. She finally realizes that it is wrong. Steven, though, confesses that what they have should not be forgotten and what he feels for Katrina is real. They end up kissing. Julian and Teresa officially tie the knot. In the end, Steven and Katrina find their way to each other, and Steven successfully produces another enigmatic opera based on Teresa's and Julian's romantic love story. Patricia fulfills her calling by becoming a nun. Later on, Julian and Teresa successfully launch their science project on the tugboat while Katrina is navigating it. Katrina and Steven are living together on the boat with Levy the dog.